All right, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Texas Public Podcast. We are here today. It is very much post-deer season, so we got a lot to talk about. There's a lot been going on. I am, of course, sitting here, not physically, but we're both kind of hiding out during our lunch hours, sitting here with my man, Rudy. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, buddy?
Man, I don't know. Feeling a little bit depressed, but I think I'm finally coming out of it.
I'm depressed too, man. Deer season just flew by, and I feel like we barely got started and barely had enough time to get what we wanted out. And, I mean, heck, we're just still trying to get it out there, but
right.
I'm depressed because I ain't out there hunting and chasing deer no more, no lie.
Yeah, but you've been self-medicating by tearing up some crappie.
Yeah, that's my other getaway. If I ain't hunting, I'm fishing. So for killing something, you know.
Yeah, it's really cool. I enjoy seeing the pictures of you tying your own lures, your flies, and everything. And you've been putting some out there too, right? Some people have been making some requests. You kind of putting some out there for anybody who wants to purchase. Kind of made to order.
Yeah, so like I wasn't like ever in the intentions of making something to sell them. Like I just love to fish and figured it's a lot easier to tie my own jigs instead of having to go to the store to buy them. And it turns out I make some all right jigs, and I come out with a little secret chatterbait that I've been kind of keeping in my pocket for a few years, and decided to tie up some with marabou, and then I got a lot of reactions off of it, and white bass running right now, so knowing I live over here on Lake Conroe, so I mean I've been getting it when I can, and the crappie spawn's going on, so
Listen, man.
That making jigs and being an okay fisherman, I guess, all kind of played together, and all of a sudden I'm selling jigs now.
Yeah, well, don't be giving away no fishing holes now, all right?
No, that's why I haven't taken you yet, dude.
Understood. Hey, we'll swap fishing holes. Freshwater for saltwater.
I've been hearing about that all last with you. I ain't been fishing with you yet.
Yeah, I know. I honestly, I love to go. My dad goes all the time. But a lot of time it's just hard to go. But we just have to make a point to do it. And that's some of my goals this year. I ran some trot lines, did some catfishing with Dad last year, and we hit the bay a couple of times, but nothing like super on the regular.
Well, I got some jigs for your dad tied up. I brought them to work thinking I was going to see you, and we had some technical difficulties. Never got to meet up. So, but yeah, I got something for your dad.
Dude, come on now. He was asking about you. He's intrigued by all the pictures because my dad is the diehard crappie fisherman at heart, and he's like, just out of the blue, we were just sitting around the house. He's like, "Hey, where Rudy catching all them crappies at?" I just bust out laughing because I honestly I knew it was coming one day, and I was kind of like holding back just to see if he would bring it up on his own because I know him, dude. I know him. Yeah, my grandpa used to have a shed, and he had his own bathtub, and he had his own aerated like well that he would keep live minnows in like all season, all year almost. And that's how that's what my dad knew. Like my grandpa got ready to go fishing, he would run minnow traps and all that, and he'd bring them home and put them in his self-made aerator, a big old porcelain bathtub that he kept, and it was so cool because I remember going over there as a kid, and he'd have the little net, and he'd let us like lift the lid and like play in the minnows and get pull them out, get ready to go fishing. It was good times.
Well, dude, like it's funny you say that because the little stint that I was a fishing guide down in Galveston, I actually had a big like a pond pool, like if you had a dug underground pond, like a small one, like a koi pond.
Yeah,
I had one of those. And I had an aerator system pumped up to it, and I was keeping croaker alive for my customers. They couldn't throw lures. So they can have something to catch fish on croaker, So
oh, yeah.
And reds and stuff like that.
Some live croakers kill it, man.
I'm about it, though, man. I just have that huge passion for the outdoors. It's not just something I like. It's not just something I do for fun. Like, I love it. I love it so much that I involve everything that I do around it,
Yeah.
Hunting, fishing, and constantly doing something out there in the woods or on the water, being outside.
Yep. Oh, I understand that. So, I mean, speaking of that, we do have one more chance to completely revisit your very extremely nice big buck you shot last year. We never got to go over the details for the listeners. I think that there's a lot of details, and selfishly, I almost want to keep them for myself, but I think there's a lot people can learn from that. At least it might be something that they've seen before, and it can help them, confirm some things that they've seen for themselves, and then just get to the point of, what led to this deer getting on the ground, dude. So you shot a freaking stud last year, and I say last year, just this past deer season. All the pictures have been put out there. It's no real secret. So if you haven't seen that, go check out those pictures. It'll probably be the thumbnail for this podcast when we post the audio on YouTube. So it's a freaking stud, man. So I guess my first question for you is, how did you stumble across this spot, so to speak, or start it where you want? But I am curious if this was a spot you have history with, or is this a spot that you found from sometime this past summer or this season?
Okay, so let's just start with how I found the spot in general. I was actually handed a general area from a friend who's local to the spot that I hunt. Grew up as a child. His whole family owns land all in the area. It's a bunch of there's some large parcels still. There's a lot of smaller parcels that back up all around the public land over here. And it's a lot of slave properties. So, like, a lot of these people don't even, have houses out there. They just own parcels that don't get managed, don't get hunted, just overgrown, land that these folks were given a long time ago. And they're just in the family. And sometimes they get lost, in generations of time, and people. Or it's something that people don't want to deal with, so they don't go out there and trim up. So that it gives the deer actually somewhere to go and get away from the pressure. But because there isn't a lot of pressure over there, the deer get really big. My buddy one day was like, "You ever hunt a Crockett?" He knew I was a hardcore Sam Houston hunter. This was about 6-7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And I said, "Man, it's far, and I hunt here, and I'm pretty good at it." He goes, "Man, if you want to, get in a good hunt, you need to go out there." I was like, "Cool, I'll go give it a try." So him and I one day loaded up in my truck, and we drove down there, and we went up there and hung out for the day. He showed me where his family lived and the land around it and where I could access. And he goes, "Yeah, man, we didn't actually go in and hand me a spot. He just said, 'This is where you could park. Go look in there. I've heard of good deer here, Good old boy stuff, not really giving it to me, but hey, go check it out."
Sure. Yeah.
And I was asking a lot of questions, looking at Onyx and talking to him, this looks like it's good, and it shows public, is there, because you never know, a lot of the questions that I get now from new hunters are I don't know where to park, I don't know and that's the same things that I encountered whenever I first started hunting these areas. I didn't want to get in trouble or my vehicle towed or broken into or anything like that, So I had a lot of those same questions, and it helped knowing somebody from there, even though they don't really hunt that hard. You know what I mean?
Right.
When this person can literally go to their family's property and then just hunt out of the truck, they're like, "Yeah, I'm not on public land. I'll just wait for them to hop over the fence and shoot them over here." And I'm like, I don't have that luxury, so I have to go in and get it. Well, let's just put it this way. My next trip out there was the following year, and I went out there with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and we put in a scout in a couple areas, and I learned them all right, I guess I say all right for where I was at and where he gave me, and I never went in and hunted it. So the following year, so this is now 2 seasons, the third season in, right?
Okay.
I decided to go in there and put in a hunt. And I saw a lot of animals, and I was like, wow, this is okay. All right. We didn't kill anything, but we saw some animals. As a matter of fact, 3 seasons ago, I put an episode out with you, and it's Penny's first season. And a lot of that footage from that hunt is in there, where we have that nice little buck coming in. They were rutting and chasing does up, and It was our first time we ever hunted there, like really put in like a hunt and scouted a little bit before. So then last year, this leads into last year. So because of that experience that we had with Penny, I was like, dude, I really just need to break down and grind out and figure this spot out. So I spent 2 weekends out there, and it's not a lot of time. Like just 2 Sundays, because I didn't have a lot of time to scout before the season, but I took advantage of what time I had, and I put a couple cameras out. What I was looking for, honestly, at the times I was scouting, I waited until September, right before, like, so late August, early September is when I was doing my scouting, and I was looking for buds for acorns, looking for white oaks and stuff that were already should have been growing. Con trees. I was looking at what greenery was growing on the ground and what bedding areas I could find, because I never really found a bedding area when I was hunting those or scouting those past couple of years. I was just finding areas the deer were coming through heavily. You know what I mean?
Right.
I never put a camera out, never set a camera, none of that until last year. And last year, so I checked that camera, and so to my surprise, I had a couple of really nice bucks on there, and I was like, wow. So if I need to dig in a little bit more, so that it comes into this past season. And I went out in August, September, and basically I followed a creek bottom around for a little while, and I was following all the feeder creeks and the drainage ditches and checking for sign of feed trees, and I'd look at the map and I'd look for something just really different, and everything looks the same, and then there's something just absolutely different. And when I found that, I would mark it as points of interest. Well, sure enough, when I got in there, I found out that some of these spots that I was marking were just ginormous white oaks. I mean, 4 of us couldn't get together and link our arms and wrap our hand around that tree there. That's how big they are.
Gotcha.
And I noted that. I said, okay, these are giant white oaks. And surprisingly, I had no sign that there were any like dropping or getting ready to drop in any of the ones I found whatsoever. But the water oaks that I found already were budded, and some were already being dropped from the squirrels chewing up in the trees. And I marked those. And what I did is when it came time for season, I went to food source. And it wasn't because I'm buck hunting, and I went to food source because I knew from the sign that I found scouting that the deer were already there if the food was there. You can see like old deer poop. You can see old browse down areas. You had heavy trails coming through these, beautyberry thickets underneath these pines. The pines were really thinned out. Like you can tell it had been about maybe 10, 15 years since anything's been in those pines, but it was all thick underbrush was beautyberries. Okay. So it was like a sea of beautyberries with heavy deer trails, and you could just see the browse lines as they went through those trails. And I'm like, okay, these are deer, not pigs, not varmints, whatever. Making armadillos, making trails and stuff. These are actual, and of course, poop and tracks. And every now and then I'd hit a rub here or there. And what happened is I'm in this bottom, and where I found there was a ridge, and it was very subtle. It hits, and the edge of it comes down to a point on the creek, and it goes straight up, dude. Like I'm looking at it straight, and I have to look up to see up to the ridge. And it's only about a 14.
Okay, so when you say you're looking at, just to get an idea of the landscape, when you said it was a pretty elevated ridge, it sounds like. So when you're standing kind of at the base of the ridge and you're looking up the point, it sounds like you're describing about how far could you walk or can you see before it like crests the top? Because if it's like real steep, you're probably only looking.
I can't see over the top. I can't see over it.
And the top is like. And the top is like how far away?
Like it probably was a 20, 30 yard increase up.
Okay, so that kind of gives you a visual of the dramaticness of that particular point. It wasn't like a
straight drop. It was a gradual, then a little steep, and then it gradually went back up. And then where the crevice was, where it peaked, obviously where the point comes down towards the creek, that's where the deer trail was.
Right.
Like I came off the deer. I wasn't walking up the deer trail. I was walking up the side of the ridge from about 300 yards if I'm looking at this way, like looking at the ridge, east would be the point going to the creek, west would be going, down the creek, and then north would be going up to the crest, south the creek's behind me.
Right.
So I'm walking north up this ridge. It hits that game trail where it crevices, and when I get up to the top of this thing, there's like a big old massive scent post rub right there. And I was like, oh. And there's heavy trails going up, and then they curve back to the left behind, back down the creek, the other way where they kind of come from. And I was like, okay. So I followed where it went. Sure enough, boom, I jump up, a couple does bedded right in some thick beautyberry / yopon thicket right there,
Right, okay. So
and I was like, cool.
So I got 2 questions before I lose my train of thought. One is, at what point, based on your initial impressions from everything that you've gathered, that you've been told, and what you've seen up to this point, was there anything was your thoughts on this area that it might be better at a certain time of year yet, or are you just kind of looking for a recent feed sign, and then kind of letting the deer tell you what's going on? Did you have a thought of when the spot might be better than other, or no, not yet?
Okay, so I did what most people that you hear on podcasts tell you not to do. I went in, I think 3-4 weeks before
just bow season.
Right before bow season, and I mean there was acorns dropping, and I went in there and I jumped deer. I pushed some out of bedding, pigs. I didn't even see any bucks or anything, but fresh rubs, fresh scrapes. I was like, okay, and I was in there marking stuff, and because that previous scout, I already knew about whereabouts where I would probably want to be. I already had set my cameras, and the only reason why I did that scout right before season was my cell camera lost batteries. Like, it was dead, so I had to put new batteries in it. And that's where all my big bucks were, up until the point I was like, and I didn't even pull out my SD card. I didn't stop and get my SD card out of my normal camera, because I had 2 cell cameras in there and a regular camera, SD card camera. And the SD card camera wasn't supposed to be a spot that I was going to hunt. It was supposed to be a spot like, okay, hey, maybe I'll catch somebody coming in and out of here, because I did find some pressure before there, And and I was like, I just feel like if somebody was going to come, they'd be right here, and at least can see if anybody's hunting as deep as I am. And if there are deer coming, use this and maybe catch what I'm not seeing over here, right, or over here.
Right, okay.
It was in the middle of the other 2 cell cameras. Dude, that camera that was in between those 2 had more pictures of, you've seen them, of big bucks than any of my cell cameras I ever caught.
Oh, man, that's cool.
So, and it immediately, okay, so I find that out after the fact, technically.
Right, right.
But, so, the way I chose the spot was basically hunting the does. I knew, once I found their beds, I said, those bucks are going to come in here looking for these girls eventually. May not be when they're there, but at least I'll know. And I adjusted some cameras, to kind of tell me what's going on. And it was just, it was too easy. It was too easy almost. And I'm not saying that in like a cocky way. The cameras did all the work. I went in there pre-scouted and all that, but the cameras told me when I needed to be there.
Right.
This year for sure. I have never relied on my cameras so much in a season, but I think because of what it told me, it just told me when to be there. I knew I had a hot doe in there. And I knew she was being chased around, and I knew there was a couple mature bucks in that area. It wasn't the exact deer I was after. The exact deer I was after was about a 160-inch 8-point. But this deer sufficed. I was totally happy when I seen him walk out, and it's not very often you can smash a 10-point on public land, so I was pretty excited about that too.
Oh, heck yeah, dude. Okay, so I got another question, and then another question.
Right.
So first, it sounds like you this is kind of tied together. Was there anything special about the spot that might be different from what you normally hunt, whether that be habitat, terrain, anything like that, that was maybe made the spot tilt a little bit more towards an advantage? Or was it kind of the typical what you see, like East Texas, mixed hardwoods, mixed pines, and you just had to break it down from a micro level?
That's exactly what I had to do. Break it
Okay.
down from a micro level because, yes, I have the pine plantations and the pine plots up on that ridge, and there's a lot of pine in there. But then you get down in these bottoms where they flood, and there's nowhere in there there's going to be growing pines, right? So, like, you might get a pine here or there, but they're not, like, planted like they are up there where they log them or they grow them, right?
Right. Okay.
So when I'm down, and in this particular set of woods, it's a little bit more open. I can see a lot further. My shots can be a lot further on the ground than I could be, let's say, closer to home. So it you have to find the thick, and when you find the thick, you find the bucks. But the bucks, you got to understand, like, you can sit there and say you found the bucks, and early bow season may get lucky, but 9 times out of 10, by the time our season starts, they're already splitting up out of bachelor groups. They're out of patterns. They're venturing out of their home range, looking for their next area to claim does. I think a lot of people fail to realize that it's not like it is up north. We don't have the timing they do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, get convoluted with that because you hear a lot of stuff and you can relate. Every now and then you might get lucky on a bow pattern early, or like the first weekend maybe. But let's be real. By our first weekend to second weekend, those deer are already in their pre-rut phases. They're trying to find places to lay scrapes and rubs and claim territories and
they
light sparring at night and trying to claim ground, and
they start moving more.
Already.
They start moving more, but it doesn't mean they're daylighting. Like we saw that real heavy this year. I mean, it could just be the nature of the areas, right? But it was like, it was it was not even close compared to years previous, but it was a long time before I got a nice buck in daylight. Like, and that's just a camera, right? I mean, that proves itself over and over. A camera doesn't tell you everything, but like normally you get them. Like some October 8th, and it's hot, and you just get one, but they start moving, but it's definitely, they don't move very far. So that the second part of my question on that was, so it sounds, when you're looking back on your camera data and the bucks that you kind of started realizing the potential, like, of the area you were like starting to figure out, did you get any of those in the earlier season, or was even the past intel telling you, like, most of what you were seeing, the best activity was closer to the rut? Was there any indication that this would be a good early season spot, or was this basically framed up around a rut time frame?
So I knew that the general area would be good because I had a very big doe population. I say large, big. It was probably like 8 does and then a couple yearlings that, come into this year. That bedded in this area right off this bottom, and basically at the base of the ridge of the point where it drops down about another 60 yards from that, it got real thick, and all the trails went into there. There was a couple of like oak trees in there. There was a water oak in there. They didn't have to go far for food if they didn't have to. Water was right there. They had a trail dropping down to the water within 40 yards. So it was kind of cool that I found that. And I marked it, and I was like, okay, these are the way I got to work around this spot, right? So, and that's why I said these cameras played a big part of this, because how it goes down, Penny and I went out there the last, what we normally do. We do that last week of October into rifle season. And that's when the rut kind of kicks off over there pretty good. And the deer are chasing real nice, and they're already fighting up pretty good. So calling them in is a higher chance over there than it would be, let's say, closer to home.
Right.
So, because we're a little bit behind over here than we are over there. Well, that being said, what happened was we got Penny's deer, and that caused me to check the camera. and I was off by like 6 days. That those must have went into heat. And I'm telling you, I didn't get these bucks. I didn't get all these bucks on my back camera nor my front camera, but I got a lot of bucks on that middle camera on that SD card camera. A lot. Like it caught maybe like 5 bucks that I never seen on those other cameras. And I was like, okay, this is where my cameras need to be. I need to be honing in on this 4-way section here. Now, I will say my back camera is where I got more pictures of the bigger bucks.
Okay.
So, but I've got bigger bucks than my big buck on that middle camera that I never saw on that front or back camera.
Right.
So I was relying off of old intel that I saw on with Penny's deer, because I showed you videos of her deer bedding there the night before. He had bedded there 3 days in a row for hours in front of that camera.
Yeah, that's right. And you mentioned that at when we started this episode right here, was that you had pictures of Penny's buck in that area, basically camped out, laying down, hanging out, but y'all actually killed him.
Like he was the buck claiming that zone on that part of the forest.
Yeah, but y'all killed him 800 yards away.
Literally
right?
800 yards away on the back.
Isn't that crazy? Like, I mean, 800 yards is such a huge distance in the type of habitat that we hunt, right? But so people should take that as in, you know, when you make a hunt and you don't see anything, you're not successful. It's like, it doesn't mean you're not in the right spot. You're just not in the right spot today. Like, it didn't work out. It just didn't happen tonight. Like, every sign can give you that there's deer here. It's supposed to happen. You know, you control everything that you can control with your access, all that kind of stuff. But I saw the pictures and the videos, and you would have thought that deer, you know, had a permanent address there, but this place that he got killed was just so far away to me. That's a long way to me in these woods. So that's just really cool, man. It just needs to. People should take some perspective from that, and it's like, especially if you're going to chase after one deer. I mean, good luck with that. I mean, it's possible, but people need to be a little easier on themselves and how difficult this can be at times. You know.
No, 100%. It's. You could be in the spot and not even see him. Never see him.
Yeah, doesn't mean he's not there.
You know,
he just got up and went.
That happened.
Yeah, he just gets up and goes a different direction for no reason, just because he felt like it. Just like you get up in the morning and you decided to, you know,
go make coffee before you brush your teeth or take a poop or whatever.
Yeah, or put your shoes on before you know. Put your shirt on or whatever.
But so I based all of my intel the week prior. So we were having this conversation on the phone earlier. It's all a blur because I sent Seth the video today of the hunt. And when you look at the hunt,
yes.
it's without context, it's hard to understand because I literally was there. We kill a deer, and y'all haven't seen that video yet because I'm still editing it. But Penny kills her buck, and then literally I take the next day off. I'm dead beat. I've been dragging a deer out all day, over a mile, and I took a day off that day. The next morning, I go and put in a hunt with Penny, and then not even, 3 days later, Seth, I shoot a 10-point, another 10-point, and a spike and a doe. And then you go out of town, and literally the day after Seth leaves out of town, I killed the big 10-point. You know,
yep.
So those hunts are put in order, but it's confusing because you're like, 1 minute they just killed a deer, and then he's in a morning hunt, then another morning hunt, then another morning. It's exactly how it went, but I did a little bit of private land hunting in between there, so that's why there's nothing in between those hunts. It's just that hunt, another hunt, and then that hunt.
Yeah. You know, a funny side story to that, when you called that morning, just a funny story for everybody else, I was in a tree stand in my saddle, in
I
Kansas.
edited that out. I had to. You didn't pick up, and I was like,
Yeah, you didn't pick up.
calling Seth. I was gonna put calling Seth, but never mind.
I was wondering, like, if you had included anything, and just me not answering. It would have been real cool if you did, but
Technically, I hung up on you before you could answer because I was calling, and then I was like, click. No, I'm not gonna let him. Dude. I realized you were some pretty big time hunter podcast dudes, and how unprofessional that was of your hunting buddy to interrupt y'all's hunt while y'all were out there trying to get some killer footage. I was like, dude, what an asshole move.
Well, like I said, the reason that's funny is because that was our first sit, myself and Andrew Maxwell with Southern Outdoorsman, and he was in a different tree, and it was in Kansas. It was cold. Our very first morning, we're out. We're hitting the ground running. It's go time, and Rudy calls me like 10 minutes into shooting light, and I'm like, don't know what to do because like and Andrew's in another tree, and I can tell. I know he's kind of not feeling the spot because we went and set up in the dark. And I was like, "What do I do?" I'm like, I'm trying to be respectful of his hunt, So I'm like, "Okay, screw it." And I answer, and then like you hung up, and I was like, "What?" I was like, I kind of read your mind though. I was like, he probably realized this is probably not the best morning. At least he thinks it's not. And I think I either tried to call you back or just text you immediately. You're like, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, dude, like, what is going on? And then, so when you finally sent me the picture, I leaned over, like, stretched my saddle out to show Andrew. And I was like, look, Rudy just shot this one back in Texas. And he was like, God, he was like, we're trying to find that in Kansas. And I was like, yeah, you see that? You better shoot it in Kansas.
That's funny.
So it was cool, man.
I don't feel like it's that big of a buck, but dude, it's a good buck. So I'll go back, correct, before I get sidetracked. So whenever I picked my spot to hunt, so in the video you'll see that I go out, I hunt, and I get in the tree. It's dark, and I try not to be right on top of where my camera's at, but I want to be within, 60 to 80 yards of my camera because I'm definitely trying to kill what's been in front of it, right?
Correct.
And I knew the deer weren't coming from the southeast side. They were following the creek, and as long as I was off the creek and set up southeast of where that transition line and where that deer trail was, that I'd be in the good. So I do that, and I climb up. Daylight comes, and I'm like, where the flip am I right now, dude?
So you haven't necessarily set this spot before, right?
Never sat it before.
Didn't have a tree picked out. Technically, you'd been there before.
Yeah, I did, but I was off. I was running late, and I didn't want to be in daylight setting up.
Okay.
So, because I wanted that 30 minutes or so of quiet time. I don't care if I get in the tree right at that first barely crack of daylight because I still got 30, 40 minutes before the deer were actually coming on my camera. I never had one between first light, and the 30 minutes of first light. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If they were there at midnight to 3. Never had them between 3 and let's say 7 o'clock. So I wanted to be in that window. And dude, I was tired. I drove far, and then I have to walk far. With all that crap all over. There's a lot of deadfalls, and I'm not 10 foot tall, so I got to run and barrel roll over all these.
What are you trying to say? What's that supposed to mean?
I can't just walk over them, okay? So I was like, dude, I'm whooped, and finally I'm sitting there, and I did a couple calling sequence, hadn't even seen anything, and I'm like, man, this is not right. Something's not right. I'm not in the game. I have to be off. And I start looking at my phone and trying to get a bearings of where I'm at by looking at my phone and looking around. And I'm like, no, this ain't right. I was like, I'm getting down. And of course, in the video, I'm like, yeah, it's time to move. And as soon as I get down and I start packing up my stand and everything, I take my first step away from the tree. And there's a freaking doe right there. Right on this creek. And I was like, crap. She could have been laying there that whole time, and I never knew it, dude.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I'm really, really quiet. Do people in climbers make a lot of noise going up? I'm not like that. I'm silent. I'm barely making cracks and cricks as I'm going up the tree. I'm not letting my metal clank or nothing. Not dragging the stand up. I'm trying to be silent, And when I'm taking it apart and putting it together, I'm trying to be silent. I do a lot of taping on my stuff so there isn't any noise whenever I'm putting my stuff together. And I scare that doe across the creek, and she runs towards my camera, and I'm like, okay, well, she's running up the ridge to that bedding area. She'll circle back to my left. I know for a fact. I get over there towards the camera, and I set up within 70 yards. In fact, I can see it, from the tree. If I zoom in through the brush, whatever. I didn't put it in the video because it's kind of stupid to video my own cell camera, whatever. And but I'm sitting there, and a little while goes by, and I mean, there's nothing going on for hours, dude. And I decided to do another rattle and call sequence at about 11:45. And within 10 minutes, I'm just sitting there nice and quiet. And I thought what I heard was of like acorns dropping, because the acorns were dropping pretty heavy, white oaks and all. I'm sitting at a white oak tree watching. That's where all the action has been going on. My does will come down, and usually within an hour after my does come down from the bedding, the bucks come in right behind them. And I was like, all right, it's going to work out. Well, I thought acorns were dropping in the creek. It turns out how this is the creek kind of does a little elbow, right? It turns at 90s to the right, and then it slowly, gradually curves back up to the left and straight. Well, at that 90, there's a little drainage that drops into there. I didn't realize that I was set up on a little feeder drainage, and it's not very long. It's about 40, 50 yards long, and it just drops, and it's not a gradual drop. It gradually at the tip, and then it kind of drops a little steep down into the creek. That buck went across the creek directly behind me, and I didn't even see him. And then he walked up the creek. What I heard, the bloop bloop, was him walking up the creek and then stepping up in that drainage, and then he came out that little drainage ditch. And when I saw him, I actually had my rifle in my lap. And my camera was facing kind of in front of me because I was expecting the deer to come straight in front of me, not behind me and up, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I flip open the lens, and by the time it starts recording, he's already about 30, 40 yards outside of that drainage ditch, working his way towards the bottom. He's on the very edge of the bottom, right, of that little ridge. And he hits my scent cone. I guess I had a little swirl or something hit right there, and man, he hit it, and he hit the eject button, and
I saw that in your video, right?
It was like a wall, brother.
Because I think you had it kind of like slowed down a little bit, maybe,
yes.
And that buck was walking, yes. And all of a sudden he stopped, and I was like, man, that seemed kind of abrupt, and I'm sitting there watching, because you don't really, you're not talking, or it's just the video, and I'm like, I wonder if he hit Rudy's trail or if he hit some scent. And that buck, turned and got out of there. He started getting out of there. I was like, oh, that was he caught some hard scent right there.
We had a really warm early rifle season. And I remember sweating on my way into my spot, And so when I seen that, it was funny because he came from the downwind side of me. And he didn't smell me until he was 20 yards away. I mean, I could have killed him with a rock. And he hit that wind scent, and then he ran up the ridge, and then he couldn't figure it out. For a while, he stood there licking his nose, and I, of course, edited it down quite a bit. And then he just slow walked away, just a little nervous, like, I don't know where that scent came from, but that was weird, and because I'm jacked up the tree like 30 foot, or more. And anyway, so this deer walks away, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I hear the pigs come, and I'm like, all right, I'm getting out of the tree. I'm done. I was like, I was going to sit all day, and I probably should have, because that evening a really big buck came out, the one I was after. And I ended up going back home and going to bed because I was deadbeat tired, with all the intentions on trying to go back and set up camp and do the whole weekend thing. Well, then anyways, that's the next hunt that I did. I actually didn't go back there. That's when I killed those 3 deer, was the next hunt.
Oh, that's right.
I did. Yep. And then I took a little break. I had processed 3 deer by myself, and I didn't want to kill anything for a few days. And then I started getting some pictures on my cell camera of some big deer and a doe being ran. And that's what fueled me up to go. And that's when you and I were talking, and I told you, I remember having this phone call with you. I was like, man, I'm just beat. I don't have any ambition right now to get up out of bed and go walk a mile into the woods to kill a deer, and not because I walk a mile every time, but that's just how far these big bucks are right now and where I was at, and it was a little bit more, but I ended up getting persuaded and just like that positive energy, just having that conversation with you, and made me want to be out there in the tree again. And not to mention that my stuff was out there. And I just remember you left, and I said, and I remember giving you hell, like, dude, you don't want to be leaving right now. And now's the time we need to be in the tree killing big bucks.
Man, so I remember I was talking to you when I remember I drove through about half of Oklahoma with you on the phone. And
that's whenever you convinced me that I should be in a tree, not at my house. Made me
but man,
totally feel that way.
It was the movement and the activity was heating up so fast. I mean, it was like peaking, was it not? Like people, like all of a sudden, everybody's like seeing bucks. Like it's like you're seeing bucks. You're like, man, I'm still seeing the movement, and we're just like, dude, I think
I'm
this is
tracking deer left and right.
Yeah, it's like you've got to go. And
it's the fact that we were seeing new bucks and a lot of them, and big bucks. And we're like, bro, we're messing up by not being here. Like, at least in the tree trying to get these suckers on film, because these are deer people dream about on public land, and that's what we're here to do is try to – it's just – you didn't do anything wrong, dude. In fact, I'm jealous that I wasn't with you hanging out with the boys out there slaying up on some big deer, because y'all ended up getting a really big deer out there, which was really awesome. And
yeah, but it was.
I felt like that deer kind of looks like the deer I was actually trying to kill, that big tall 8.
Yeah, it was just a big clean 8. But it was funny when I got up there. we found once we got settled in and everything, and they were like, well, "Man, how's everything back in Texas?" He was like, "What are y'all deer doing right now?" He's like, "Is the hunting any good?" And I'm like, "Right now, it is on fire." And he was like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude." I was like, "This is going to be the best few days right now with the conditions." I was like, my buddies back home are
so all. Tell them. So this is where it all comes into the hunt of what happened with my buck. So tell everybody what happened with the conditions when you left.
Oh man, well, I think when November rolled around, it was like this all over the Southeast regionally. 80s, just November sucked. I mean, it was like an extension of October up until about the 14th or so. Just rain, humid, warm, and then all of a sudden, dry, low pressure. 35 degrees, in the mornings,
out of nowhere.
48 degrees, 50 for a high. Absolutely like turned on a dime as far as the conditions went, and the timing of the month. It was setting up. So you had high hopes, but then the reality set in is when all that stuff blew through, and it really didn't disappoint. And I was like, I ain't gonna lie, man. I was. It sounds stupid maybe to somebody, but it was hard. Like, it was hard for me, like knowing all the work that we had put in, and I was like, I made the commitment to go. And I think I've said this before on the podcast and everything, but it was for me, it was the best of both worlds, because you were here and I was getting to live the local action through you. Like, I was trying not to think about what I might miss, because I was getting to live it through you. Like, you're an extension of me. I know. I was like, anything that's great for Rudy is like I get to experience that too. And yet I was up there experiencing like, kind of a later Kansas rut time frame. So it was really cool. But yeah, it was. If things wouldn't have gone down differently, it would have been disappointing. But so you go back in, right? You're spent. You've done cut up like 5 deer, and yeah, it's been raining.
Convinced me to get out there. It's like the 14th. We had a good cold front finally. Not a cool front, because them boys don't know what a cool front is. We get cool fronts here in Texas, and then we get cold fronts. This was a cold front, and I was like, dude, I really didn't want to go. I was so free. But every time I do that, that's when the big boy walks out. And I was like, I'm going. I'm not going to not go. In fact, I woke up. This is how the hunt went down. I woke up. I told Penny, I said, "Hey, are you getting up?" Because she was off that day, and she says, "I'm sleeping." And I said, she says, she goes, and I go, "Hey, if you ain't getting up, then I'm gonna go get it." Because I was gonna put her on a private piece, right? Get her on a big buck.
Yeah.
And then she was like, "No, I ain't going." And I said, "All right, I'm going. See you later." And I burned the boy. I mean, I burned out.
You had a long way to
And I
go.
mean, yeah, I was gone. Then I get there, and I get geared up. I text her, "I'm going in." She's like, "I should have got up." I got that message after I was in the tree. But anyways, so I get in there, and on my way in, I'm pretty sure I heard them, skedaddling on. And I went about another 100 yards, dude, and I'm not even remotely close to where I was going to set up. I'm right where that big camera, where all the big bucks are, pretty much. And I could see it, basically, from my camera from where I shot the deer. And I was like, my other camera, my SD card camera, and I could smell them. I've tracked enough deer, because even in your video, you said I could smell them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, a rutted buck, you know that smell when you smell it. And when I say this smelled like so strong, there's no way it was just one buck. You know what I mean? I said, there's something going on in here. There may have just been a fight or something, but that tells me that they're cruising through here. I'm going to set up right here, right now. And I took my flashlight and I did the big no-no. I just did a quick click and I looked around real quick and I was like, I didn't have a tree picked out or nothing. I didn't know, And I turn around and I look behind where I came from and I click my light back. I was shining up in the trees though this time, and I look around and I'm like, well, another 15 yards behind me, there's a tree. And I got up that tree, facing towards where I know the traffic goes through. And I had been in the tree for about 20 minutes. And I think those deer, skedaddled on a little bit and waited until it got quiet and then just came back. Because I wasn't even done setting up the camera. And I could hear them, and they're walking right underneath me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, oh man, they're going to smell me. I stink. Smell so bad. I'm sweating already because I'm layered up and I'm trying to get in there,
So how far was this from the original location where you were talking about hunting earlier?
About 600 to 500 yards.
Okay.
Yeah. It's roughly between 500 and 600 yards in between somewhere.
So what is the movement you're expecting to catch? Is it just, you think you're going to see just bucks cruising, or you think the does are there feeding locally, they're living there, and they're going to have bucks on their tails?
Basically, how this sets up is 600 yards is where that ridge drops down and meets the creek, and about 80 to 90 yards, east of that ridge down the creek bed is where that yopon thicket. And then about another 300 yards from that is a heavy crossing from another ridge that comes from the north to south that drops into that same creek bed right there. But there's a huge, canary grass flat in there. And it's got a couple oaks splattered. I've been trying to get you in there so you can get a picture of what I'm talking about. And then it comes to the creek where that big crossing is, which then comes to me. There's a 4-way intersection. And, I mean, that's where I got that camera. And it's on the corner of where a pine thicket meets the creek bed on the other side. That ridge drops down into the creek. Then that ridge goes into that canary flat, which falls into the creek. And then behind me is just open, sporadic pines and little mounds. I call mini mounds, but higher elevation points of parts of pines. And then in the bottom parts, there's just beauty berries and oaks and yopons, but it's real open. It's easy to get through there. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's fat acid. I mean, it's awesome. I got to take you in there and show you so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. I've never hunted country like this until I've been in there. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
It makes the area very enjoyable to hunt because you're not killing yourself. Now, there are some areas that are harder to walk through. Don't get me wrong, but there is a lot of really cool stuff and a lot of diversity, a lot of food, a lot of different food, so, and that's the thing. I was just basically hunting where the does like to eat. And what this area was, if I followed this to the south, it bleeds into public land about, I don't know, 400 or 500 yards away. And that goes into a pasture. So I think what was going on, and when these deer do, because I've seen them whenever I'm driving, they go from one block of woods, they cross this pasture into the next block of woods.
Right.
And
Okay.
sometimes, in the deer season, they don't cut that hayfield. And there's some islands of some thick brush out there, and I think they bed in there and then come out of there and feed on the oaks and stuff. See what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I don't have any proof of that, but I mean, I'm just kind of adding all. Why would they be coming directly across the middle of a wide open hayfield?
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And it just makes sense because I've seen them cross the road over there, but I can't access where they come in without actually having to walk the distance. You know?
Right.
So it sucks, but it's part of the grind, right? And all I was doing, I would never kill a doe in there ever because that is way too far to walk and drag one out. But I will definitely kill a big buck in there. In fact, I'll kill 2 big bucks in there a year and drag them out. For instance, Penny got hers in there, and then I went in there a couple weeks later and got mine. You know.
So
But
when this buck stepped out, the one that you got, what was he doing and what was his demeanor? Like,
well, so this in the morning, then deer came through and they were grunting and bleating and chasing, and then they meandered on, and I didn't hear anything for a while. Daylight comes, a couple hours goes by, nothing had happened, and I did a calling sequence again, and just expecting something to come crashing through, and that's not what happened. He did, but it wasn't like in minutes. It was like 15, 20 minutes later. I heard, and I ain't seen a deer before him. And not even as dead. Well, them does, I guess. I did see a couple does, but they came out to my left and walked down away from me. And I'm like, okay, well, that's the 2 does that I showed you on camera.
mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's the 2 residential does that are always right here for sure. And I was like, okay. And I just was watching when I heard him running. It sounded like a tank running through there. That deer's body size was 2 times the size of any deer that I had seen in there anyways. I knew he was the man, you know, like immediately when I saw him step out, I was like, oh my God, that thing is massive.
Yeah. No matter what was on his head, huh?
Yeah, I honestly didn't even pay attention to that at first because I just saw how big his body was, and I was like, oh, Lord, okay. And I immediately, even though you probably don't believe me, I reached over to my camera because I like setting my camera up on my right side, opened up my camera, and it opens up, and then I hit record. But what I did was accidentally hit record twice. I do that a lot when I'm excited and I'm in a hurry. And I'm trying to get it to start recording so I can grab my bow or my gun, and because, of course, you're trying to get the shot on film. And I double-clicked the record button, and I get it. I didn't even realize this. Like, I'm looking at the camera. He's running directly to me. At the time I see him, he's about 160 yards out, and he's running directly to me. By the time I get the camera focused on him, he's about 100 yards out. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I zoom out a little bit because I know he wasn't walking. He was kind of fast-paced trotting almost walking. It's like trot walking, I guess. And he was just kind of looking around with his nose up. So to me, he was searching. And it's a lot what my dog does when he's close to a doe. And I think what happened was he smelled whatever was going on previously in there.
Yeah. Okay.
And he was finally hitting that wind and that rattling and all that noise I made. And I was like, what's going on over there in my house, you know? And he come running to check it out. And, well, I mean, I basically... He went to turn his head to the left, and I thought he was going to, because I did have a doe right at first light come out. I think I have a video still on my phone, and she turned and walked like away from me. And right where she turned and walked away and went back into the right is where he turned his head to smell. So I was getting ready to shoot him there. And then he stopped, and he was like, no. And he kept walking. I'm like, okay. And it took me a little bit. And at this point, he's about 80 yards away or closer. And he took that right step. And when he did, I put it on his shoulder, and he took one more right step and goes where those 2 does were. And I shot him. And I'm going to be honest, he didn't even flinch, dude. I thought I missed. He took that round, and he kind of hunched up a little bit, I guess. I was like, oh no, I think I missed. Maybe he just reacted to like the shot. And I couldn't really tell if it was like a flinch or a hunch.
Holy cow.
And I'm freaking out, dude, because this thing's mad. I'm like, oh my God. And then I realized at this point, when I got the scope on him, how big his rack was. I was like, dude, that's a giant. I was all excited. And then I started getting nervous after that first shot. And he runs about 40 to 50 yards, and I can still see him. But he runs to me and around like a horseshoe to me and away. And he stops about 60 yards away, and I can see him broadside. And I notice this hole in him, and I'm like, there's no blood coming out of it. It's kind of yellow and pussy, and I'm like, that's weird. Okay. And I rack another round, and I'm getting ready to shoot. And if you watch the video, he starts stumbling, and I'm like, he's going down. Like, I'm talking, like, at this point, he's going down. He's going, I just smoked a giant. He went down, and then, like, he starts flopping. And the first thing I do is immediately pull my phone out of my pocket and call Penny. Like, I'm hitting send, and I'm watching this deer as he's wobbling and going down. So when she picks up the phone, like, hey, babe, don't forget, she stayed home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because she's tired, you know, from hunting hard, and she already got her big buck, and you know, she's like, what'd you do? And I was like, I just shot a giant buck. And I cursed him, you know, and I pulled a Seth, and I'm freaking out, and I'm like just shaking, and the whole moment's going on, and I couldn't believe it, dude. And then sure enough, it's the deer that'd been shot before. He took an arrow. His whole right lung was just a pus sack.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, the arrow went in through his back strap, and it came out his right lung. And I got pictures of that, too. I could probably send it to you. You can put it in the video.
I don't remember you telling me that. Did you tell me this already?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what I was doing, but
I don't know. You were just caught up that I shot a big buck, probably. But and he wasn't limping. He didn't show any sign of hurt, bro. And when I'm telling you, this deer had the heart of a warrior. Like, he was rutted up, he was shot, and he was coming in to fight and chase a dove. And when I shot him, he didn't even act like I hit him. And he fought that to the last second. And in the video, I think you see that. And I think I left that in there because, not that I want people to see that, it's just like that deer had the will to live, and he was a warrior. He was a warrior, and he fought that bullet, and I was just impressed. And the fact that I found part of an arrow in him with a whole exit hole, it took out a whole right lung, bro. And of course, I'm not going to post that picture or anything, but if you ever want to see the picture, ask me, I'll send it to you. It's pretty crazy. It was just a big old pus sack. His left lung was fully intact, and there was it went out like the third rib behind the shoulder. So it was like a graze of the top of the lung, and that whole lung collapsed and just turned into a whole pus. It was gross.
Oh,
but
man.
I didn't eat a portion of that deer because of infection, you know. He was infected.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he was going to die, though, because all kinds of deer have wounds, get infected from fighting. I mean, eyes and stuff like that, and they live. So
yeah, and a lot of animals. It's not rare to find a deer that that live with one lung. We've talked about. Yeah, I've heard that a lot in the seminars. Talking about deer anatomy and post shot kind of investigation and what people have experienced. A one lung shot is, it may have been at one time, but it is really from the trackers and I suppose including yourself, not considered fatal potentially, right? So
yeah, I mean, so a one lung, it's a 50-50. It's a matter of how much damage. If it's with a bow, it's lower than it is with a rifle,
right? Yeah, for sure.
But I tell anybody with a single lung deer, like, how soon can I get there after this next track? Because you're not the first person that called today. And it's one of those deals, like, I don't want to give it time to really lay up. I'd rather just push it while he's already hurt, and then see if we can he can be outran, basically.
Yeah, I've heard it described the same way in that situation, especially with a bow shot. that looks like possibly a one lung, if you don't think it has any liver or liver blood, your best option at that point is to just push them, right?
Yep.
So,
and the same thing with a leg shot deer. That's why anytime somebody has a leg shot deer, I'll almost give him a few hours to lay up, get nice and sore, let that adrenaline of his wear down. That way, when we do push that adrenaline again, his leg's hurting already.
yeah.
Adrenaline don't kill that. It don't kill the pain. It just gets you excited. But originally, when it first happens, that adrenaline helps him push. But because the leg's sore now that it's been broken and it's been shot and busted up for a little while, it makes it a lot harder for them to want to run far. And that makes it a lot easier for the dog to bay up the deer.
Right.
So, do a lot of leg shot deer this year. Learned a lot. I love a leg shot deer, but I don't really like it on public land because them deer got a lot of ground they can cover.
Yeah, they do. So with all that, man, is there anything that you took away from this particular buck? Either the timing, the area, the experience, anything that you took away that
Absolutely.
that you necessarily didn't have before? Just any takeaways from that particular hunt?
So I've been hunting public land since I was 16. I am 36. I will be 37 this year. So last year was my 20th year anniversary of hunting public land, consecutively too. Not like taking a year off and not hunting it. Like I've hunted it from since I was 16 until I'm 36. I take a lot of pride in that because it's not like a deer lease, where I can bait them in and make them come to me. And our deer aren't nearly as patternable as they would, let's say, on a piece of private land. But what I took from that, is I finally think 20 years into my studying and hunting that I can say I've dialed in the rut, good time frame to be in the woods. And if you've been listening, you'll know there's no reason for me to repeat it. I've said it over and over and over again when I'm in the woods, and I literally step away from work. I step away from tracking. I don't care about money. All I care about is killing a big deer in that 2-week time frame. And this year and last year are testaments to show that I can be tagged out by the last week to first week of November pretty closely.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to hunt and you're looking to take advantage of the time that you have off, and you don't have 2 weeks, but know that last week to the first 2 weeks of November, that 3-week time frame, if you can get the time to get in the woods, that's the time to be in the woods. Not that I want crowds to just I just think if you're listening, and what we're trying to teach you, and you're wondering when to be in the woods, you're not going to kill them from the couch. This podcast isn't going to kill them for you. You got to go out there. You got to find them. You got to put in the work. But if I chose to be out there at a certain time, say Mondays to hunt, that's the time I want to be out there.
Yeah. No, 100%. One of the things that I take away from your experience, because I say this because you talked about it during the summer, you talked about it last year, and even somewhat like the previous year, and you even talked about it some earlier. And this is maybe just kind of know they're gonna understand what I'm talking about. Everybody will understand what I'm saying, but because it's nothing tactical, it's nothing that's gonna help you kill more deer faster. There's nothing like that. It's nothing gonna be mind blowing. But what I got is you told me, you're like, man, I want to kill a certain type of deer, and I think I need to go here to do it. So some people can take away from that. If you're hunting an area,
that's true too.
That and well, you've put a lot of time into it, and you're hunting it because it's local or it's close to the house, whatever, and you're just like, but you're not seeing the deer, the quality of deer that you're hoping to hunt and hoping to get, and just so you can have that moment. You can sit and wait on it. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it may happen once every 5 or 6 years, when you could travel 50, 60 miles away and be in a whole different type of quality of deer herd and increase your chances with the same skill set, but you'll increase your chances by a pretty good percent, right? You're going to put yourself in better quality deer and you might have to work a little harder for it just logistically, but you might put yourself in a situation where all of a sudden you're hunting, you're not really doing anything different strategically, but you're hunting better quality deer. And it's like, holy crap, like I should have been here a while back, you know? And that's just a preference thing. But I think it's cool that you talked about it. You knew where the quality of deer seemed to be on a different level, and you kind of learned about this particular area. I mean, you took it from 30,000 foot view all the way down to getting on one of them bad boys, dude. So that was pretty cool for me. I was like, man, Rudy said he wanted to shoot one that was next level, and he basically jumped ship, you know, from a lot of what he knew, and went and found one because he just followed his instincts on the quality of deer, you know. So I think that's pretty cool.
A good take on that. I mean, I appreciate that, man, because it's not like I don't have anybody to beat, and I'm not trying to beat anybody, and I'm not trying to be better than anybody or say that I'm better than anyone at all. These are just personal milestones and goals, you know, at the end of the day, and that's what makes me happy out there. And I smoked a spike. I'm not biased to any deer. You know,
right.
You know, I just like shooting deer and eating them. And at the end of the day, you're right. I set a goal out for myself, and I know I made it look easy, but this wasn't a 1 year journey, you know. So this is a 2-3 years in the making. And I think I dialed in an area, and it's safe to say that I think I've got a couple deer that are in there for next year that should be absolute hammers. And it's just to be continued, man. Y'all just stick it out with us, you know, and hopefully be a part of that journey and get to see the success, because I told Seth, and y'all are the testament to hear it, this podcast, if he's ready to get in there and get on some real deer, you know, let's get in there.
Oh, man.
Dissect this with me.
So listen,
you know?
you almost had me convinced, if you remember. You almost, because I had just got back into town, I was like, man, I really need to get out and like see what's going on. So you were you know, about to give me a leg up and be like, man, you need to come in here the day before I went out, right? And then I was like, man, I'm still getting pictures of deer. I was like, man, I'm gonna go to this spot. Like, I'm gonna go to that spot that I know. And
you should have still went to my other spot.
But it's so far, dude. You think it's far for you? I went, you know.
It's not far for a big deer. It's not too far.
Well, no, okay, yeah, no distance is too far for a big deer. Okay,
you went all the way to Kansas for a deer you didn't even shoot.
That's a good point. Yeah, like, you know, it's funny because everybody I tell, like, I went to Kansas this year, they're like, "Oh, would you get one?" I was like, "We
sure did.
We got one," you know, because I wasn't really hunting. I was just filming the guys. Everybody's like, "So you weren't hunting?" And I was like, "No, you know, I was with some guys and they were filming, and or they were hunting, and I was filming for them." They're just like, they get this look on their face like, "Why would you do that?"
You have a passion to film and tell a story.
Yeah, exactly, man. Memories, dude. Like, I you know, it's not fluff, man. It's those memories are just priceless.
Hopefully next year you and I collaborate on some hunting on some public lands and capitalize and take advantage of that little time frame and see what we can do. I know we've been talking about out-of-state hunts and stuff, so we'll see. We'll see how it plays out this year. I've got one thing that might be hiccuping me into my deer season this year, and it falls right in the middle of November.
Uh-oh. So, you got a kid on the way or something?
Dude, no way. No, we'll play it by ear and see, man. But I definitely know that you and I need to get together. Get over here to this next section of woods. So Seth and I went on a scout and did a scouting video together 2 years ago. And to believe it or not, I told him that day that we're not far from somewhere I already hunt. And it's not far from where I'm killing all my big deer.
Yeah.
And we just know that area is heavily pressured and it's not really worth hunting. But I found the nook and cranny.
Yeah, so, and that camera is...
Get in there and get on it.
And that camera is still there, bro. I got to go back and get it.
I know, mine is too. I need to go in there and get my stuff out, man.
We need to
together.
Yeah, we need to just, I mean, now's the time, right? We need to plan us a little postseason scout trip, swing in there, grab those, and then hit some stuff, film it, talk about it, and because it's that might be for another day, for another conversation.
So maybe do that soon.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. So Well, we cruise right past an hour, man. I know you're busy. He may be working, he may be not. So don't nobody get upset. So it's his lunch hour though, so it's all good. It's all good. So no, thanks for taking the time, man. Today is so good.
Glad to finally get it out there, bro.
Yeah, to sit down and talk to you, and coming into the weekend. So I mean, my goal is we knock a couple of these out, but we'll let you run, man. I think we'll let everybody go. Any closing thoughts, comments?
I don't know. Till next time, guys.
Yep. Tear up them crappie, huh?
Yep.
All right, guys. Appreciate you tuning in to this episode of the Texas Public Podcast. Rudy's Huge Buck. It's going to be coming out on video really soon. Can't wait to see the final touches on that. It's going to be really cool. It's a really good story, and it just happens to be a Mondo. So thanks, everybody, for listening. Go check us out on Facebook. Check out the YouTube channel where we post everything. Reach out if you got any questions. Say hi. Rudy, Texas Coastal Outdoors, and does his tracking every year. He tracks a lot of deer. Has a lot of knowledge to share that is hard to come by. So always appreciate that. But all right, guys, we will see you next time.